Hey everybody again, this is Kevin Singer with Neighborly Faith here with Khalid again. Khalid is a great friend of mine and leader of Muslim Student Association in Southern California. Khalid and I have been creating videos to help Christian groups like yours establish a relationship with the Muslim student organization on campus so that you can plan an event or a dialogue or a program to really create opportunities for friendships and faith conversations, because as we've spoken about so many times, Khalid, Christians and Muslims make great conversation partners. There's so much good stuff for Christians and Muslims to talk about. And thanks again, Khalid, for being here with me today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Anytime.
So today's topic has to do with, what happens if, maybe groups have followed all your advice from video two. How do I establish a connection with the Muslim student group, and we are just not successful? Like, we haven't gotten a message back, haven't gotten an email back. We're still really excited to hang out with Muslims on campus, but we are hearing radio silence. So that's the topic of the day, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks listening today who might say that's me. Like, I'm excited. I feel like I've got the right heart and the right motivations for this, and I see the value, but how can I hang out with Muslims if there is no Muslim to hang out with? And so that's kind of what I'm hoping you can help us out with today. Khalid, so for a Christian group that's followed all sort of the right steps, so to speak, to reach out to Muslims on campus or the Muslim Student Association, and they continue to struggle, they continue to have issues, sometimes, and that's my first question for you, are they reaching out to the wrong person? Like, are they reaching out to someone that maybe was the MSA president 5 years ago? Or like, who might they be reaching out to? Who do they need to be reaching out to? Are they reaching out to the wrong person?
Well, as I stated in video two, the best way to reach out to an MSA in general or any MSA board member would be through their Instagram. All right. Obviously, they could have other forms of social media, but Instagram is the best outlet and form of communication to have with an MSA. That being said, every MSA could be different. Sometimes there's one person handling all of social media. Sometimes MSAs will separate the days and have all board members do a little bit of marketing. But usually MSAs will typically have a marketing director in charge of all social media. So if you end up sending a message to Instagram, which will probably be your highest percentage of success with getting a reply back, chances are it will be the marketing director of the MSA, and that is the person you will want to contact. So if you just contact the MSA on Instagram, you're contacting the right person.
So let me ask you this. Let's say the marketing director is like, well, I've got to talk to the vice president, and the vice president's got to talk to the president, and then it gets kind of bottlenecked. Does that happen from time to time? And
occasionally,
should they really try to get to the president if they're having a little bit of trouble through Instagram with the marketing officer?
I mean, that could be plan B. Plan B is you could try to fish around a little bit and try to figure out when does the MSA board meet. You could firstly ask on Instagram, ask the marketing director if they'd be willing to have a guest into one of their executive meetings. And, that would be actually a great idea. You guys could have one representative to come to an MSA meeting, and you'll be welcomed like a guest. And, if you want to have an event and if you think that's the best way of communication, if it took too long to try to get something planned, then definitely you could do that.
Let me ask you this question. I think a lot of Christian groups have the size that if 5 people over here want to go do this event or start this program, they do it. And then if this group over here is like, oh, we want to do Frisbee golf, and this over here is like, we do bonfires. With MSA groups, my guess is the size maybe isn't hospitable to a lot of those kind of splinter events. And there may be a little bit more centrality to the leadership deciding these are the events that we are going to do. Do you find that to be true where the president, vice president, they have a lot of pull and a lot of sway in terms of like the one direction that the group goes when it comes to events?
Yeah, so president and vice president, any MSA, they will typically have the, can you see me okay?
Yeah.
something happened. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So the president and vice president, they'll typically have the most power on board, and as you said, it is quite centralized,
Mhm.
but it also depends on how big the MSA is. Like I know an MSA, the or MSU now that it's called the Muslim Student Union the Muslim Student Union at UCI, University of California in Irvine,
Mhm.
and their organization's huge. So much so that every board member has a special committee that help. It's like a board within a board.
Yeah.
Like that. So sometimes MSAs will be that big where you could have those little niches and everyone kind of does their own thing, but then sometimes we'll have really big events and come together. So you just, I mean, for your specific campus, you'll just have to try to figure that out when you message an
Mhm.
MSA. And
Yeah.
MSAs will usually be pretty open about that. You know, they really have nothing to hide. So they'll probably tell you, you know, how many people you have, the MSA has, how many people typically join their events, how many niches there are, that sort of thing. MSAs are pretty decent with communication once you establish a form of contact.
Every once in a while, we hear about an MSA that maybe didn't have the best experience with a Christian group on campus. It's
Mhm.
far more rare than people might think. Usually, the experiences are good.
Mhm.
Or what you sometimes find is that the experiences have been between the Muslims and the pretty left-leaning Christians on campus who, and I don't say that pejoratively, but mainly just Christians who maybe already have more space in their theology to see the value in sort of working or dialoguing across faiths. Uh,
Mhm.
but let's start with the first group. So maybe a group that said, "Oh, we had this run-in with a Christian group, and all they wanted to do was tell us how wrong we were, and that we were, uh, usually Muslims feel demonized by those experiences, right?
Yeah.
Uh, what advice might you give to a Christian group that maybe has the right intentions and is really seeking like genuine friendship and dialogue, but they run up against a Muslim group that's like, no way, no how, to me, you're all the same, or, we're afraid that, we're going to get proselytized to in this really aggressive way again. What would you encourage a Christian group in that situation to do?
Well, there are two main things that come to my mind. Number one is just be genuine.
Hmm.
Obviously, every religion has their bad apples, so to speak, and who knows? Sometimes they could be college students, unfortunately. But just be genuine. And if you want to reach out to your MSA, please do so. We don't want to hold you back or think that you'll be inferior for doing so. We're gonna think you're like some infidel or whatever. That really isn't the case. I mean, as Kevin said, most experiences between Muslims and Christians on college campuses are very positive, very positive. Me personally, I haven't experienced anything bad from any Christian organization in any college, and I've been doing MSA for like over 3 years now. So
Yeah.
it's very rare. But if there are ever any past experiences or past political drama or whatever, just be genuine, and just be sincere and be like, we don't know what happened last time, but we're different. We're more genuine. We really just want to get to know you guys. And friendships are really big. If you establish friendships with MSA members, especially board members, then you'll get some good luck.
There might be some Christian groups who they're aware that there are some like complicated political dynamics between Muslims, particularly in Palestine, and then the Israeli conflict, Jewish Muslim conflict in the Middle East. And they might say, I just don't know anything about that. I really just want to love on people. Like, what would you recommend? Like, is there like a basic set of knowledge that Christians ought to have when they engage Muslims on this topic? Should they try not to engage Muslims on this topic? Is there something they definitely shouldn't say to Muslims on this topic? Is it okay for them to not know much about this topic? Like, how can Christians best love Muslims as they have concerns about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, I mean, first off, most Muslims will typically support the Palestinian cause as opposed to the Israeli cause, just because of cultural, historic dynamics, and pretty much how the Muslim community functions. We all have different backgrounds, different ethnicities, but at the end of the day, we all call ourselves Muslim. And so typically, especially in the US, you'll see someone call themselves Muslim before their actual like ethnicity. Being Muslim will mean more important. And so Palestinians are mostly Muslim, although there's a significant Christian minority Palestinians as well, but most of them are Muslim. And so that's generally why, you know, Muslims will typically support Palestine. You'll especially see pro-Palestinian activism on college campuses. Not to say that, you know, Palestinians are angels or whatnot, or that Israel's angels. Both have their, you know, have their mistakes, obviously. But you'll typically see most MSA college activism on campus. Like that's where you'll really see the outcry, especially whenever there are Palestinians and Israelis fighting each other pretty intensely, and you'll see it on the headlines all over the world. Oh my God, you know, there's another fight in the Holy Land in Palestine and Israel. You know, that's when you'll really see a lot of protests, depending on how big the MSA in your college is, obviously. But MSAs will usually do something. They'll either put a statement out or whatnot. So that being said, you know, you have to understand that it's a very touchy subject. It's actually the most touchy subject that you can have with a Muslim, because Muslims will typically have I don't want to say like a blind support for Palestine, but Muslims will always support Palestine. It's very dear to our hearts, and not that we hate Jews or anything like that. Far from it. It's Israel, you know, that we have a problem with, and it's not anti-Semitism. You know, it really isn't. It's not hatred for all Jews. It's hatred for what a country is doing to certain people. That's pretty much all it is. So if you want to have a discussion with a Muslim, you can, but just bear in mind that that is most probably what the Muslim will be thinking and how a Muslim will feel.
And I think for Christians, we do have resources in our faith to support human life and flourishing, to not support human suffering, and to work alongside those who are trying to do that systematically, like to reduce human suffering, to support human flourishing. So the question for us as Christians is, when Muslims say they support Palestine, right? Like underneath that, what could feel like a very political statement is, we are supporting the flourishing of Palestinian people, human beings, and also doing whatever we can to oppose and reduce their suffering. And that is sort of what I hear, and what I hear when I hear Muslims talk about this topic. And so I think we as Christians can engage in conversations around how to reduce human suffering and support human flourishing without feeling like we're totally selling ourselves to a political position. I think there are opportunities to do that. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit more about that. So Khalid, some of our sort of Christian friends watching these videos may not exactly know where to place Muslims when it comes to their relationship with, say, university diversity initiatives, or, you know, Muslims, of course, many are people of color, although there are Muslims that may pass as white. Some of my best friends who are Muslim are Turkish, and so they are definitely of a lighter skin tone. Muslims are so impressively racially and ethnically diverse. It is unbelievable. And if for anyone listening, if you ever walk into a mosque, do not have any preconceived notions about the color of anyone you're about to see, because it is a very, very diverse faith group. It's also a faith group that I think a lot of Christians are seeing go a bit towards the Democratic Party and to the progressive sort of political side of things. And so there may be a little bit of, you know, curiosity about, like, are young Muslims still devout? Are they still, you know, orthodox according to, like, you know, historical traditional Muslim teaching? Like, you know, what is their relationship to some of the diversity initiatives we see on campus? And How should Christians sort of be imagining what sorts of conversations around politics or diversity they may have with their Muslim friends? Talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So most young Muslims, especially Muslims on college campuses, will typically lean more towards the left on the political spectrum. But it's it's becoming more difficult now because the woke ideology, if you just want to call it that, or a more extreme version of leftism, you could say. You'd think that, oh, just more diversity, more equity, they're going to be supporting more minorities, and sure, they're supporting more, people of color and more diverse ethnicities on campus, and seeing, how can we, support their culture or whatnot. But now Muslims are finding that lots of things that the woke ideology is promoting is actually against Islamic teachings and morals. So lots of college Muslims will have this sort of internal battle within themselves sometimes and be like, okay, well, Muslims, we lean more economically and environmentally left, but we're more socially conservative with tradition and, just the way we carry ourselves, our ethics or morals. That's just how we are. So lots of Muslims will, are more so in the middle now. You'd see that more in the middle, although there is a significant minority of Muslims that are starting to actually lean right more politically and saying, no, like, I'm a conservative now, I'm a Republican, I don't like these, the woke ideology. You'll find that, but still majority are left leaning. But it's really good to know the dynamic right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Khalid, of course, for all of your terrific thoughts. You are a wise guide, I think, for us as we try to imagine a campus community and culture where Christians and Muslims are actually talking to each other. Because I do think society, the health of faith and civic life depends on Christians and Muslims being friends. Just in the past week, and this video will be dated at some point, but just in the last week, we're seeing examples of Christians and Muslims expressing similar concerns over certain social movements in society right now that, and again, like wherever you stand, it's quite profound to see a faith group say, maybe politically speaking, we wouldn't normally want to be in this conversation together or be in this, be on the same side, but we're going to do this because it makes sense. Our values are similar. Our beliefs on moral issues and social issues are similar. I just think there's so much promise in what Christians and Muslims can do together. This is just a microcosm of that. And so thank you again, Khalid, for taking the time, being so generous with all the advice you've given us.
I know, my pleasure. I always have a blast talking to you.